6 years ago, Nathan Moore was on every magazine cover in New York. The golden boy of Wall Street. A visionary CEO who built an empire from scratch and became the face of power, wealth, and ambition. Reporters called him the man who could turn anything into gold. Investors worshipped him. His company's name flashed across billboards from Times Square to Silicon Valley. And then, one night, he vanished. No statement. No farewell. No explanation. The man the world thought untouchable simply walked out of his penthouse and disappeared. For Julia, it was not just headlines. It was her life unraveling in front of millions of strangers. She was left alone with a 2-year-old daughter, Emily, to face the storm. Reporters camped outside her house for months, demanding answers she didn't have. Rumors swirled like vultures. Nathan ran away with another woman. Nathan lost everything in a secret deal. Nathan was in debt to criminals. Nathan faked his death. Each lie cut deeper. And while the world speculated, Julia carried the real burden, explaining to her baby why Daddy never came home. She built her life on anger, telling herself Nathan was nothing but a coward, a fraud. That belief became her shield, her only way to keep moving forward, until one rainy night, 6 years later, Julia ducked into an old bar on the outskirts of Brooklyn to escape the storm. She only wanted a quiet corner and a drink strong enough to numb her. But as soon as she stepped inside, the sound froze her in place. A piano, not just any song Claire de Lune. Her breath caught. That was their song. The one Nathan used to play in their penthouse late at night. When the city glittered beneath them and their world felt invincible, her eyes darted toward the stage. And there he was, Nathan Moore. But not the titan she remembered. This Nathan was gaunt, his sharp jawline hollowed by time, his once perfect suit replaced by a wrinkled shirt, silver streaks threaded through his dark hair. His hands trembled slightly as they moved over the keys. Julia's stomach dropped. It was like seeing a ghost. She clutched her purse, her knuckles white. Rage, grief, shock, all of it collided at once. 6 years of raising Emily alone. 6 years of explaining the unexplainable. 6 years of biting back tears while the world mocked her. And now, here he sat, alive, playing a piano like nothing had happened. The first words slipped from her lips. Like shattered glass. You're still alive. Nathan looked up. His fingers stilled on the keys, and silence filled the bar. His eyes, once so piercing they could sway boardrooms, now looked tired, haunted. He blinked, and for a fleeting second, Julia saw the man she once loved. Julia, he rasped, his voice coarse, broken. I thought you'd never find me. Julia's breath trembled. Never find you. The words stabbed her. She hadn't been searching. She had buried him in her heart like a dead man. The fury boiled over. You think this is about finding you? Her voice cracked through the quiet bar. A few patrons turned, but no one intervened. You walked out on us, Nathan. On me. On Emily. 6 years. You left your daughter without a father. Nathan's head bowed, his shoulders shaking. I know, he whispered. You have every right to hate me. Julia's fists clenched, nails digging into her palms. Hate doesn't even begin to cover it. Do you know how many nights she cried for you? Do you know what it's like to watch her ask if Daddy was coming home when I didn't have an answer? Tears welled in Nathan's hollow eyes. But instead of excuses, he said the one thing Julia never expected. I didn't leave because I stopped loving you. I left Because I had no other choice. The words hit her like a blow. No other choice. What kind of cruel explanation was that? Julia's voice shook with fury. You had every choice, Nathan. And you chose to vanish. But Nathan didn't argue. He simply lowered his gaze, pressing his trembling hands back on the keys, letting the unfinished notes of Claire de Lune drift into the heavy silence. Julia stood frozen, her chest heaving. For 6 years, she had lived with one truth. Nathan Moore was a selfish man who abandoned his family. But now, staring at his broken figure, she felt her certainty begin to crack. What if the truth was darker? Messy as something she never imagined. Julia's chest rose and fell in ragged bursts, her heart pounding so hard she could barely hear over the thundering in her ears. She wanted to lunge at him, to shake the truth out of him, to demand every answer he had buried for 6 long years. Instead, she stood rooted in place, her voice a trembling blade. No other choice. That's all you have to say to me. Nathan's fingers hovered over the keys, but he didn't press them. His shoulders sagged under an invisible weight. If I told you back then, if I told you why, it would have destroyed everything. It would have put you and Emily in danger. Julia let out a bitter laugh, sharp and cold. Danger. Don't you dare spin me another story, Nathan. You were a CEO, not a spy. The only danger you cared about was losing your throne. His face flinched at the words. She had struck the raw nerve, and for a moment his facade cracked. His hands clenched into fists on his lap, the veins visible on his thin wrists. You think I cared about the company more than my family? His voice broke, not with anger, but with anguish. Julia, you have no idea what was happening behind the curtain, what I was up against. Julia took a step closer, her heels clicking against the warped wooden floor. The bar had gone eerily silent, as if even the walls leaned in to listen. Then tell me, she demanded, her voice shaking. Tell me what could possibly be so catastrophic that you walked out on your wife and child without a single word. Nathan lifted his gaze to hers, and in those hollowed eyes she saw something she had never expected. Fear. Genuine, bone-deep fear. You wouldn't have believed me, he whispered. Try me, she shot back, her fury blazing through her grief. Nathan's lips parted, but the words died in his throat. He shook his head slowly. Not here. Not yet. It's not safe. Julia's fists tightened at her sides. Not safe. Her voice rose, trembling with rage. You left a toddler without a father, Nathan. Do you have any idea what Emily has been through? Do you even care that she grew up thinking she wasn't worth staying for? The mention of Emily's name made Nathan flinch as though struck. His composure cracked entirely, and for the first time that night, his face crumpled with raw pain. Emily? He breathed, his voice so soft it was almost inaudible. His hands trembled on the piano keys, pressing one sour note that echoed in the silence. How is she? Julia's throat closed. Anger battled with grief inside her, and for a moment she couldn't speak. Then the dam broke. How is she? Julia's voice erupted, sharp and broken. She cries at night, Nathan. She asks me why she doesn't have a daddy like the other kids. Do you know what it's like to look into her eyes and lie, to tell her she's better off without you? You think you protected us. You destroyed us. Nathan bowed his head, tears streaking down his hollow cheeks. His once proud frame shook with silent sobs. I thought leaving was the only way to keep you safe. He whispered again, as though clinging to the words like a lifeline. "I thought you thought wrong," Julia cut him off, her voice fierce. "You thought you were making some noble sacrifice, but all you did was abandon us. And now you sit here, hiding in this bar, while your daughter grows up believing she wasn't enough to keep you home." Nathan's breath shuddered out of him. His hands fell from the keys into his lap, limp and defeated. "You're right," he murmured. "I failed her. I failed you. There isn't a day that passes where I don't hate myself for it." For a fleeting moment, Julia saw the man she had once loved, the man who had held her under starlit skies, whispered promises of forever, played lullabies for their baby girl. But that man was buried under 6 years of silence, and Julia's fury burned away the remnants of tenderness before they could surface. She turned, her voice sharp. "Don't you dare cry now, Nathan. You lost the right to tears the moment you walked out." She reached for her purse, ready to storm out into the rain. But before she could, Nathan's voice stopped her cold. "Please," he rasped, desperation lacing every syllable. "Don't tell Emily you saw me." Julia froze. Slowly, she turned back, her eyes blazing. "What did you just say?" Nathan's eyes brimmed with anguish. "She doesn't need to know I'm alive. Not yet. She deserves better than a broken man who has nothing left to give. Please, let her keep hating me. It's easier that way." Julia's jaw dropped, her fury trembling on the edge of collapse. The man who once commanded boardrooms with a glance now sat before her, a shell begging for erasure. For the first time since she walked in, Julia felt something unfamiliar: fear. Fear that the truth he carried might be bigger than her rage. But she would not, could not, let him dictate their lives again. Her voice was ice. "Emily deserves the truth. Not your silence. Not your shame. The truth. And whether you like it or not, Nathan, I will make sure she gets it." She turned and strode out, the storm outside swallowing her whole dot behind her. Nathan sat slumped at the piano, his hands trembling over the keys, whispering to the empty air, "I'm sorry, Emily. I'm so sorry." Rain poured endlessly that night as Julia drove home from the bar. The windshield wipers swiped furiously, but no rhythm could drown out the storm in her chest. Her hands clutched the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles turned white. She had seen him. After 6 years of silence, 6 years of grief and fury, Nathan was alive. Alive and reduced to a ghost of himself. Every word replayed in her head. "Don't tell Emily you saw me. Let her keep hating me." Her heart twisted with rage and disbelief. How dare he ask her to carry that secret? How dare he try to control their daughter's life after abandoning her? When she finally pulled into the driveway, the house lights were still on. Emily was waiting at the window, her small figure silhouetted by the lamp. Julia forced her face into composure as she stepped inside, but Emily's sharp eyes caught the redness around her mother's. "Mum, were you crying?" Julia froze, caught between instinct and truth. She knelt, brushing damp strands of hair from Emily's forehead. "Just tired, sweetheart. It's been a long day." Emily studied her a moment longer. At 10 years old, she had learned to read her mother's face like an open book. She didn't press, but the suspicion lingered in her gaze. Later that night, after tucking Emily into bed, Julia sat alone in the kitchen with a glass of wine. The silence pressed in like a vice. She thought about waking her daughter and blurting it out, "Your father's alive. I saw him tonight. He's not the man you remember, but he's breathing. But the image of Nathan's haunted eyes stopped her cold. If she told Emily, what then? Would her daughter run to him, desperate for answers? Would Nathan reject her again, shattering what little innocence remained? Julia buried her face in her hands. She didn't know which truth was worse, the lie of abandonment or the reality of a broken man who claimed he had no choice. The next morning, Julia found Emily at the kitchen table with a half-eaten bowl of cereal and a notebook sprawled open. "What are you working on?" Julia asked, pouring herself coffee. Emily shrugged. "A letter. To who?" Emily's voice was quiet, almost embarrassed. "Dad," Julia's breath caught. "I know you said he's gone," Emily added quickly, her eyes flicking up nervously. "But sometimes I feel like if I write it down, maybe he'll see it. Wherever he is." Julia's chest tightened as Emily slid the notebook toward her. Scrawled in uneven handwriting were words that shattered her heart. "Dear Dad, why did you leave? Did I do something wrong? Mum says no, but I can't stop wondering. I miss you. I don't remember your voice anymore. Please come back. Please, I'll be better. I'll do anything." Tears blurred Julia's vision. She reached out, clutching the notebook to her chest. "Emily, you never did anything wrong. Never." Emily's lips quivered. "Then why isn't he here?" Julia opened her mouth, but no words came. The truth pressed against her lips, begging to be freed. Instead, she whispered the only thing she could manage, because sometimes people make choices that hurt, even when they think they're doing the right thing. Emily frowned, confusion clouding her face, but she didn't push further. She only whispered, "I wish he hadn't." That night, Julia lay awake, listening to the rain tap against the window. She couldn't erase the memory of Emily's letter, her daughter's desperate plea. Nathan's silence wasn't just her burden anymore. It was Emily's wound, festering deeper every day. Across the city, Nathan sat at the same piano bench in the dim bar, staring at his trembling hands. He had not slept since Julia left. "Emily," he whispered into the darkness, her name cracking on his lips. "I don't deserve to see you. Not yet. But God, I miss you." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a crumpled photograph. Julia holding a toddler, Emily, both laughing at something out of frame. The photo was creased, nearly torn, but he carried it everywhere as his fingers traced their faces. Nathan's chest ached with a pain sharper than any boardroom defeat or corporate scandal. He had lost everything: his empire, his reputation, but losing them had broken him beyond repair. Still, he knew one truth Julia did not. His disappearance hadn't been about pride or selfishness. It had been survival, and soon, whether Julia liked it or not, the past he had run from would come knocking again. Saturday mornings used to be Julia's favorite slow breakfasts. Quiet coffee, Emily drawing at the table. But this morning, peace was impossible. Emily sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by crayons. She was sketching two stick figures holding hands with a smaller one between them. Julia's heart dropped when she saw the title at the top. "My Family." Julia forced a smile. "That's beautiful, sweetheart." Emily beamed, then asked the question Julia dreaded most. "Mum, did Dad ever draw with me?" Her hand froze on the coffee mug. "You were very little, Emily. I don't think you remember, but did he?" The persistence in her daughter's voice made Julia's chest tighten. "He was." "Busy," Julia managed. Emily frowned. "Busy with what?" Busy enough to never come back. The words pierced Julia like a knife. For 6 years she had carried the story alone, hiding Nathan's absence beneath vague excuses. Now the lies felt like glass splintering in her throat. "I don't know if he deserves your drawings," Julia whispered before she could stop herself. Emily's eyes flashed. "That's not fair. Maybe he had a reason." Julia's temper flared, surprising even herself. "A reason to leave his daughter without a word. To vanish while I raised you alone. What reason could ever make that right?" The room went silent. Emily's eyes filled with tears, but she bit her lip, refusing to cry. She shoved the drawing away and stormed upstairs, leaving Julia shaking at the table. Hours later, Julia found Emily curled under the blankets, hugging the sketchbook to her chest. "I'm sorry," Julia said softly, sitting on the edge of the bed. "I shouldn't have raised my voice." Emily's whisper cracked. "Do you hate him?" Julia's breath caught hate. The word felt too small for the fire that had burned in her since Nathan's disappearance. Yet staring at her daughter's trembling shoulders, Julia realized her hatred was tangled with grief, love, and betrayal. "I don't hate him," she admitted. "But I hate what he did to us." Emily peeked out, eyes red. What if he didn't want to leave? What if something happened and he couldn't come back? Julia froze. How could Emily's instinct be so close to the truth? She stroked her daughter's hair, choosing silence over lies. Emily whispered, "Sometimes I dream about him. But when I wake up, I don't remember his face. That scares me." Julia pulled her into her arms, swallowing the ache in her throat. "You don't need to be afraid. You have me. That's enough." But even as she said it, she knew Emily didn't believe her. Across town, Nathan sat hunched in a dim hotel room, his body racked by coughs. Blood stained the handkerchief he pressed to his lips, but he shoved it aside, unwilling to face what it meant. The doctors had warned him years ago, the damage from stress. Alcohol and years of pushing himself to the brink wasn't reversible. His health was failing, and now time was running out faster than he wanted to admit. He stared at the photo, again, Julia's eyes bright, Emily's toddler grin wide. Regret clawed at him until it was unbearable. He whispered to the empty room, "If only I could tell you why. If only I could explain before it's too late." But even as the words left his mouth, he knew explanation would never erase the years of silence. He had chosen exile to protect them, but all Emily would ever see was abandonment. A knock startled him. His old associate, Marcus, stepped inside without waiting. "You need to leave this city," Marcus hissed. "If Julia finds out the whole truth, it won't just ruin you at all, put her and the girl in danger." Nathan's jaw clenched. "I won't run anymore." Marcus shook his head. "Then you'd better prepare yourself, because secrets never stay buried. And when Emily learns who you really are, she may never forgive you." That night, Julia lay awake again, staring at the ceiling. Her daughter's words replayed endlessly. What if he didn't want to leave? For the first time in years, Julia considered the possibility that her version of the truth wasn't the whole story, that Nathan's silence had roots deeper than selfishness. But then she remembered the years of loneliness, the birthdays Emily had cried through, the empty seat at every recital. Her jaw hardened. Whatever the reason, it didn't erase the damage. Yet somewhere, buried beneath the bitterness, a fragile thought flickered. What if Emily deserves the truth, even if I can't bear it? The next week arrived heavy with rain. Grey clouds clung to the skyline, pouring steady sheets that blurred the city into watercolor smudges. Inside their apartment, the storm felt like a mirror of Julia's thoughts, relentless, unyielding, impossible to ignore. Emily sat at the window, tracing raindrops with her finger as they slid down the glass. Her sketchbook lay open on the sill. Julia glanced over her shoulder and froze. Emily had drawn a man, this time tall, dark suit, no face. Next to him, a little girl held his hand. Julia swallowed. That's new. Emily didn't look up. It's Dad. Her voice was so steady, so matter-of-fact. Julia's heart stumbled. You don't even remember what he looks like, Julia whispered. Emily shrugged. That's why he has no face. But I still dream about him. In the dream, he's always reaching out for me, but I can't catch him. Julia's chest tightened. Emily, Mum, do you think he ever wanted to see me again? The question dropped like thunder in the small room. Julia pressed her lips together, fighting the urge to blurt out anger or sorrow. For years she had shielded Emily with half-truths, but the girl was no longer a toddler. She was searching for answers, and Julia feared she could no longer keep them locked away. Before Julia could speak, Emily turned, her young face hardened with determination far beyond her years. I want to know him, even if he's bad, even if he doesn't care. I want to know. Julia's stomach churned. What if knowing breaks her? What if it ruins the fragile peace I've built for us? That night, when Emily was asleep, Julia sat in the living room, clutching an old shoebox she hadn't touched in years. Inside were photographs, letters never mailed, and a single silver cufflink Nathan had left behind. She ran her fingers over the objects like they were fragile relics. Every piece carried a memory, his laugh echoing in the kitchen, the smell of whiskey on his breath, the warmth of his hand on hers before boardroom walls and late-night fights turned him into a stranger. Her phone buzzed. A text lit the screen. It was Rachel, her closest friend, still awake. I know that look in your eyes. Jules, you're thinking about him again. Julia typed back with trembling fingers. Emily keeps asking. I don't know how much longer I can keep him a ghost. Rachel's reply came quick. Maybe he's not just a ghost. Maybe she deserves to know before it's too late. Julia dropped the phone, her pulse quickening. The words "too late" echoed like an omen dot across the city. Nathan stood in front of the hospital window, his reflection faint against the storm. Machines beeped behind him, monitors tracking the rhythm of a heart that was no longer as strong as it once had been. Dr. Levin adjusted his glasses. Mr. Moore, you can't keep ignoring this. Your condition is deteriorating faster than expected. Without intervention, I know, Nathan interrupted. His voice was flat, but his hands trembled. Levin sighed. If there are people you need to make amends with, do it now. Time isn't generous. Nathan stared at the rain streaking down the glass. Julia's face filled his mind, followed by the little girl whose laugh he hadn't heard in 6 long years. His chest ached, not just with illness, but with regret. But Marcus's warning still rang in his ears. The business rivals he had crossed, the dangerous debts that shadowed him, his absence hadn't been simple abandonment. It had been protection. At least, that's what he told himself to survive. Still, he whispered into the sterile air, Emily, will you ever forgive me? Back at the apartment, Julia startled awake on the couch, the shoebox still in her lap. A noise stirred her. She padded softly toward Emily's room, only to find it empty. Her heart lurched. panic surged until she noticed the front door was unlocked, outside, in the rain. A small figure trudged down the street, clutching the sketchbook to her chest. "Emily!" Julia shouted, running barefoot onto the slick pavement. Emily spun around, hair plastered to her cheeks. "I'm going to find him," she cried. "I'm tired of waiting for answers." Julia grabbed her shoulders, shaking with fear and anger. "You don't even know where he is." Emily's lip trembled, but her jaw stayed firm. "Then you tell me, or I'll look until I find him." Julia's breath caught. Lightning cracked overhead, illuminating her daughter's face, so fierce, so desperate. For the first time, Julia realized she couldn't cage Emily's questions forever. "Please, Mum," Emily whispered. "I need to know who I am." And in that moment, Julia knew the time for silence was ending. Asterisk. The following morning, the storm had passed, but the air remained heavy with tension. Julia brewed coffee mechanically, her hands trembling as the machine hissed. Emily sat at the table, damp hair tied back, sketchbook closed, eyes fixed stubbornly on her plate of untouched cereal. Neither spoke for several minutes. The silence stretched taut until Emily broke it with a single, quiet demand. "Tell me where he is." Julia set the mug down too hard, coffee sloshing. "Emily, you can't keep lying anymore," Emily snapped, her small fists clenched. "If you don't tell me, I'll find out myself." "You don't think I can? We have the internet. His name was everywhere once. I'll find him." Julia's heart cracked at the defiance in her daughter's voice. She recognized it was Nathan's stubborn streak, the very fire that had once drawn her in. She sank into the chair opposite Emily, folding her arms tight. "Your father isn't who you think he is anymore." Emily's eyes narrowed. "Then let me see for myself." Julia hesitated, her mind flashing through memories. Nathan in glossy magazine covers, Nathan with champagne in hand, Nathan shouting late at night when the weight of business drowned him. Then the empty doorframe, the silence that followed. Her throat tightened. "If I take you to him, you have to promise to listen, to see the truth, not the fantasy." Emily leaned forward, her voice trembling with both fear and excitement. "I just want to see him. Please, Mom." By noon, Julia found herself in front of her closet, pulling out a raincoat. Her hands shook as she reached for the shoebox once again, this time retrieving an address scribbled on the back of a faded letter. It had been Marcus, Nathan's younger brother, who had quietly slipped it to her once, insisting she deserved to know where the ghost hides. Now, Julia tucked the paper into her coat pocket when Emily emerged from her room. Backpack slung over her shoulder, Julia's heart ached. The girl looked like she was preparing for a pilgrimage, not a simple meeting. They left the apartment and hailed a cab. The city passed by in muted colors, Emily's reflection staring back from the window with wide, restless eyes. Julia's stomach knotted tighter with every block. The address led them to a modest building downtown, its brick facade weathered, a faded sign reading Evergreen Rehabilitation Clinic. Not the empire of glass towers Nathan had once commanded. Emily frowned. "This can't be right." Julia's hand squeezed hers. "It is." Inside, the air smelled faintly of antiseptic and old carpet. A receptionist looked up, surprised at the sight of Julia. Recognition flickered. Julia could see the question forming. The weight of gossip revived, but the woman said nothing, only pointed them toward the third floor. Emily clutched her sketchbook like a shield as they climbed the stairs. Meanwhile, Nathan sat on a narrow bed in a plain room, flipping through a file of medical charts he barely understood. His hands trembled slightly as he tried to steady them. Marcus leaned against the doorframe, his face drawn with fatigue. "You can't keep pretending this place is a hotel, Nate. You're here because you're sick." "I know," Nathan muttered, his voice rough. Marcus's gaze softened, though his words were sharp. "And because you left a mess behind. Julia deserved better than silence. Emily deserved her father." Nathan closed his eyes, the guilt heavier than any diagnosis. "Don't you think I know that? Every day I see her in my dreams. Every day I wonder if she hates me." Marcus opened his mouth to reply, but footsteps echoed down the hall. A knock at the door silenced both men. When the door opened, Julia stood there, framed by the dim light of the corridor. Emily hovered at her side, her eyes wide, face pale. Nathan's heart stopped. Julia's voice trembled, but it carried steel. "Emily wanted to see you, so here we are." The silence that followed was suffocating. Emily clutched her sketchbook so tightly her knuckles turned white. Nathan's gaze locked on her, drinking in every detail: the slope of her nose, the stubborn tilt of her chin. His chest ached with recognition. "Emily." His voice cracked. "You've grown so much." Emily didn't move. She didn't smile. She simply stared at him, eyes sharp, wounded. Julia bristled. "Don't you dare pretend this is normal. You disappeared, Nathan. You left us in ruins." Nathan's throat tightened. "I had reasons. Julia's laugh was bitter. "Do reasons tuck a child in at night? Do reasons explain why she cried for you until her voice went hoarse? Tell me, Nathan, what reason is good enough for that?" Emily flinched at her mother's tone, but didn't look away from Nathan. Instead, she whispered, almost too softly to hear, "Why didn't you come back?" The question pierced him deeper than any accusation. His lips parted, but no words came. Julia shook her head, tears glistening in her eyes. "Say something. Tell her the truth. Don't let her grow up with silence." Nathan lowered his gaze, shame flooding him. But when he lifted his eyes again, they glistened with tears. "I wanted to. God knows I wanted to. But the truth is darker than you think." Emily's brow furrowed, her voice trembling. "Then tell me. I'm not a little kid anymore. I deserve to know." And Nathan knew the time for shadows was over. The room felt too small, too suffocating, as three lives collided after years of silence. Julia stood stiff near the doorway, every muscle tense. Emily remained in the center, sketchbook still clutched, her wide eyes locked on the man who had haunted her dreams without a face. Nathan sat hunched on the bed, pale, thinner than she'd imagined a powerful CEO could ever become. "I should have come sooner," Nathan whispered, his voice raw. "Every day I thought about it." Julia's laugh was sharp, bitter. "But you didn't." Her words cracked through the air, making Emily flinch. Nathan winced as though struck, but he didn't look away this time. His gaze was fixed on Emily, drinking her in like he might vanish if he blinked. "You want the truth?" he asked, his voice trembling. "The truth is, I didn't leave because I stopped loving you. I left because staying would have destroyed you." Julia crossed her arms, fury sparking in her eyes. "Don't you dare turn this into some twisted sacrifice. You walked out, Nathan. You vanished without a word. You let us drown in the wreckage while you hid. Nathan's breathing quickened. You think I wanted that? You think I didn't tear myself apart every single day? His voice cracked into desperation. There were people, powerful people, who would have hurt you both to get to me. Deals gone wrong. Enemies I made while climbing higher than I should have. The night I left, I thought it was the only way to keep you safe. Emily's small voice cut through the storm. Safe from what? Nathan turned to her, his chest heaving. Safe from men who didn't care about laws, Emily. Men who wanted to use me, destroy me, ruin everything I touched. If they had known about you, about Julia, he broke off, raking a trembling hand through his hair. I couldn't let them. Julia's jaw tightened. So you decided to make the choice for us, to disappear and let the world assume you were a coward. Do you know what that did to her? Emily's lip trembled. I thought you hated me, that I wasn't worth staying for. Nathan lurched forward, pain twisting his features. No. Never, Emily. You were the only thing that kept me alive when everything else was falling apart. I left because I loved you more than my own life. Tears spilled down Emily's cheeks, but her voice rose, sharp and broken. Then why didn't you say goodbye? Why didn't you at least let me know you existed? Nathan's hands shook. He reached out instinctively, but Julia stepped between them, protective, fierce. Don't you dare touch her unless she wants you to. Nathan's arm dropped, shame flooding him. He bowed his head. You're right. I don't deserve her trust. Or yours. But I can't run anymore. I don't have the time left to pretend. Julia's eyes narrowed. What do you mean? For a moment, Nathan hesitated. The machines in the hallway beeped faintly, a reminder of the truth he had hidden even from Marcus. His illness gnawed at him every day, and he could no longer conceal it behind careful words. He looked up, his voice breaking. I'm sick. That's the other reason I came here. And it's getting worse. The words hung heavy in the room. Julia's breath caught, and Emily's eyes widened in shock. You're lying, Julia spat, but her voice faltered. Nathan shook his head slowly. I wish I was, Emily whispered, her voice fragile as glass. Are you going to die? Nathan's silence was answer enough. The room felt too small, too suffocating, as three lives collided after years of silence. Julia stood stiff near the doorway, every muscle tense. Emily remained in the center, sketchbook still clutched. Her wide eyes locked on the man who had haunted her dreams without a face. Nathan sat hunched on the bed, pale, thinner than she'd imagined a powerful CEO could ever become. I should have come sooner, Nathan whispered, his voice raw. Every day I thought about it. Julia's laugh was sharp, bitter. But you didn't. Her words cracked through the air, making Emily flinch. Nathan winced as though struck, but he didn't look away this time. His gaze was fixed on Emily, drinking her in like he might vanish if he blinked. You want the truth? He asked, his voice trembling. The truth is, I didn't leave because I stopped loving you. I left because staying would have destroyed you. Julia crossed her arms, fury sparking in her eyes. Don't you dare turn this into some twisted sacrifice. You walked out, Nathan. You vanished without a word. You let us drown in the wreckage while you hid. Nathan's breathing quickened. You think I wanted that? You think I didn't tear myself apart every single day? His voice cracked into desperation. There were people, powerful people, who would have hurt you both to get to me. deals gone wrong. Enemies I made while climbing higher than I should have. The night I left, I thought it was the only way to keep you safe. Emily's small voice cut through the storm. Safe from what? Nathan turned to her, his chest heaving. Safe from men who didn't care about laws, Emily. Men who wanted to use me, destroy me, ruin everything I touched. If they had known about you, about Julia, he broke off, raking a trembling hand through his hair. I couldn't let them. Julia's jaw tightened. So you decided to make the choice for us, to disappear and let the world assume you were a coward. Do you know what that did to her? Emily's lip trembled. I thought you hated me, that I wasn't worth staying for. Nathan lurched forward, pain twisting his features. No. Never, Emily. You were the only thing that kept me alive when everything else was falling apart. I left because I loved you more than my own life. Tears spilled down Emily's cheeks, but her voice rose, sharp and broken. Then why didn't you say goodbye? Why didn't you at least let me know you existed? Nathan's hands shook. He reached out instinctively, but Julia stepped between them, protective, fierce. Don't you dare touch her unless she wants you to. Nathan's arm dropped, shame flooding him. He bowed his head. You're right. I don't deserve her trust, or yours, but I can't run anymore. I don't have the time left to pretend. Julia's eyes narrowed. What do you mean? For a moment, Nathan hesitated. The machines in the hallway beeped faintly, a reminder of the truth he had hidden even from Marcus. His illness gnawed at him every day, and he could no longer conceal it behind careful words. He looked up, his voice breaking. I'm sick. That's the other reason I came here, and it's getting worse. The words hung heavy in the room. Julia's breath caught, and Emily's eyes widened in shock. You're lying, Julia spat, but her voice faltered. Nathan shook his head slowly. I wish I was. Emily whispered, her voice fragile as glass. Are you? Are you going to die? Nathan's silence was answer enough. The silence in the room was suffocating. Even the steady hum of machines outside the door felt too loud, too cruel a reminder of the truth Nathan had dropped into their laps. Emily's chest rose and fell in quick, shallow breaths. Her small hands tightened around the sketchbook until the paper crumpled beneath her fingers. You're sick, she whispered again, as if repeating the words might make them less terrifying. Nathan's voice was hoarse. Yes, Julia's eyes glistened, but she forced her arms tighter across her chest, trying to hold herself together. How long? Nathan hesitated. The truth tasted bitter. A year, maybe less. The doctors say it depends. Emily's breath hitched, and tears spilled down her cheeks. That's not fair, she cried, her voice breaking. You leave me for years, and now you come back just to die. The words shattered something inside Nathan. His hands shook as he pressed them into his knees. Emily, I didn't want this. I fought. I tried to hide it, to beat it, but I couldn't. And when I realized I couldn't run from it anymore, the only thing I wanted was to see you again. To see the person I love most before it's too late. Emily shook her head violently, sobs tearing from her throat. No, you don't get to say that. You don't get to leave and then come back like a hero just because you're sick. Julia caught her daughter as she collapsed against her, the sketchbook slipping to the floor. Julia stroked Emily's hair, eyes locked on Nathan with a mix of fury and devastation. You hear that, she hissed. "This is what you've done. You don't get forgiveness just because you're dying. You don't get to rewrite history." Nathan flinched, every word striking deep. "I don't want forgiveness," he whispered. "I want a chance. Just a chance to sit with her, to hear her laugh, to tell her I love her. Even if she never says it back. Even if she hates me until the end." Emily lifted her head from Julia's chest, her tear-streaked face trembling with confusion. "If you loved me, why didn't you fight harder to stay?" Nathan's own tears spilled, unrestrained. "Because I thought disappearing would save you. And I was wrong. I see that now. I was a coward. I was afraid of losing you to enemies, afraid of losing everything I built. But in trying to protect you, I hurt you worse than anyone else ever could." His voice broke completely. "And I'll never forgive myself for that." Julia's heart twisted painfully. She had spent years building armor against his memory, crafting anger to hide the raw wound. Now, watching him crumble before their daughter, she didn't know whether to scream or collapse. Emily, however, stepped forward, her hands shaking. She picked up the fallen sketchbook and thrust it at him. "Then prove it. If you're really sorry, prove you love me before you die. Don't just say it." Nathan's fingers brushed the sketchbook as if it was sacred. He held it gently, tracing the lines of her drawings. His shoulders shook with silent sobs. "I will. I swear I will." Julia watched, her throat tight. Part of her wanted to pull Emily back, to protect her from further heartbreak. But another part, the one still aching from Nathan's absence, whispered that maybe Emily deserved this sliver of truth. However fragile it was. Nathan looked up, his eyes red but steady. "I can't fix the past, but if you let me, I'll spend whatever time I have left showing you who I really am. Not the CEO, not the ghost. Just your father." Emily's lip trembled. She didn't answer, but she didn't walk away either. And in that fragile silence, the first thread of possibility of something between forgiveness and farewell began to take shape. The days that followed felt like walking on broken glass. Julia found herself pacing the apartment at night, replaying every moment at the clinic, every word Nathan had said. She hated herself for remembering the look in his eyes, the same look that had once convinced her to trust him with her whole heart. Now it only unsettled her, making it harder to keep the walls up. Emily was quieter than usual. She still drew in her sketchbook, but the faceless figure that had haunted her pages now had eyes. They were drawn carefully, shaded with surprising intensity, eyes that seemed to watch, to plead, to exist. Julia noticed, but said nothing. She feared what acknowledgement might mean. One Saturday morning, Marcus showed up at their apartment. He looked exhausted but determined. Julia opened the door reluctantly, her hand still on the frame, as though she might slam it shut if his words cut too deep. "He wants to see her," Marcus said simply. "No, he needs to. And before you slam this door, Julia, just know this Athen doesn't have years left. He barely has months. You can hate him all you want. You have every right. But Emily deserves the choice to decide for herself." Julia's jaw clenched. "And when she's broken again, when he dies in her arms after leaving her once already, who will pick up those pieces?" "Me, I will." Like always, Marcus's expression softened. "You think she isn't already broken? She wants her father, Julia, even if it hurts. Especially if it hurts. Don't take that away from her." Julia closed her eyes, her hand trembling on the doorframe. She wanted to scream, to throw Marcus out, to keep the fragile life she had built from collapsing. But behind her, she heard Emily's voice. "Mum, I want to go." Julia's breath caught. Emily stood there, sketchbook in hand, her small shoulders squared with more determination than a child should carry. "I want to see him again." That afternoon, Julia and Emily returned to the clinic. Julia's heart pounded as they stepped into Nathan's room once more. He was sitting near the window this time, a blanket over his legs, a book in his hands. When he looked up and saw Emily, his entire face transformed. "Emily," he whispered, like the name itself gave him strength. Emily hovered in the doorway, unsure. Julia gently nudged her forward, her own heart torn. Nathan closed the book and placed it carefully on the table. "I don't want to waste your time with big speeches. I know I can't erase what I did. But if you'll let me, I'd like to spend whatever days I have left being your dad, however you'll allow me to be." Emily bit her lip. What if I don't know how to have a dad anymore? Nathan's chest tightened. He held out his hand, not demanding, just offering. "Then we'll figure it out together." For a long moment, Emily didn't move. Then, slowly, she crossed the room and sat in the chair beside him, her small frame stiff but present. She didn't take his hand, but she didn't pull away either. Julia stood in the background, arms folded, her heart aching. Watching them felt like reopening an old wound that never fully healed. But there was something in Emily's eyes, hesitant curiosity, a flicker of longing that kept Julia silent. Nathan reached for the sketchbook resting on Emily's lap. "May I see?" Emily hesitated before handing it over. He flipped through the pages carefully, each drawing a glimpse into her heart. When he reached the faceless figure, now with eyes, his own blurred with tears. "You drew me," he whispered. Emily's voice was soft, trembling. "I didn't know if I should give you a face, but now, I think I can." Nathan pressed the sketchbook to his chest, emotion shaking him. "Thank you, Emily. You'll never know how much this means." Julia looked away, blinking hard. For the first time in years, she felt her anger battling with something more dangerous, the faintest glimmer of hope. The next week unfolded with a cautious rhythm, as if every hour balanced on the edge of breaking. Julia accompanied Emily to the clinic after school, always insisting she stayed in the room. She told herself it was to protect Emily, but deep down she knew it was also to protect herself from Nathan's eyes, from the dangerous possibility of letting him close again. Nathan made no grand promises. He didn't try to erase the past with flowers or gifts. Instead, he filled the silence with simple things. He asked Emily about her classes, about her drawings, about the little details that made up her days. He listened with an intensity that made Emily uncomfortable at first, then curious, then slowly, tentatively, trusting. One afternoon, he brought out an old chessboard, its edges worn but polished. "My father taught me on this," he explained softly. "I thought maybe I could teach you, too." Emily frowned at the board, skeptical. "I don't even know how the pieces move." Nathan smiled faintly. "That's where we start." Julia sat stiff in her chair as she watched Emily lean forward, listening as Nathan explained the pawns, the knights, the rooks. His voice was patient, softer than Julia remembered. She thought of the man who used to come home late, barking into his phone, slamming glasses onto the counter. This version felt gentler, fragile. Even by the third visit, Emily had beaten him once. though Julia suspected Nathan had let her. Emily's triumphant grin, however, was real. "Rematch tomorrow," she declared, pointing a finger at him. Nathan chuckled, his chest shaking with a warmth Julia hadn't seen in years. "I wouldn't dare say no." That night, back at their apartment, Julia found Emily sketching again. This time, the faceless figure had a faint smile, lines drawn with hesitant care. Julia leaned against the doorframe, watching quietly until Emily noticed. "What?" Emily asked, defensive. Julia shook her head softly. "Nothing, just. You look happy." Emily's pencil stilled. She lowered her eyes. "I don't know if I should be." The words cut Julia deep. She crossed the room, kneeling beside her daughter. "It's okay to feel whatever you feel, Em. You don't have to choose between loving him and being angry. You can be both." Emily bit her lip. "Do you still hate him?" Julia hesitated, caught off guard. For years, the answer had been easy. Automatic, yes, but now, after seeing him with Emily, hearing his quiet apologies, watching his hands shake when he thought no one was looking, the certainty had cracked. "I don't know," Julia admitted softly, "but I know I don't want you to carry my anger. That's mine, not yours." Emily's eyes shimmered. "What if he dies before I figure out how I feel?" Julia's chest tightened. She pulled Emily close, whispering, "Then we'll face that together." Back at the clinic, Nathan sat alone after they left, staring at the chessboard still set up mid-game. His chest ached not just from illness, but from the bittersweet joy of having them near again. Marcus entered quietly, setting down a folder of medical reports. "Your numbers are getting worse," he said bluntly. Nathan didn't look up. "I know." "Then stop wasting time," Marcus pressed. "Tell Julia everything. Tell Emily everything. Don't let them find out from anyone else." Nathan traced a pawn with his finger. "I'm trying. But every time I look at her, every time I see the hope in her eyes, how do I tell her I won't be here to watch her grow?" Marcus's voice softened. "By being here now. By giving her memories strong enough to hold on to when you're gone." Nathan's throat tightened, but he nodded. He picked up the white queen, holding it gently before setting it back in place. Tomorrow, he promised himself. Tomorrow, he'd tell her more of the truth. The clinic room was unusually quiet that afternoon. Rain pattered softly against the window, washing the world outside in muted greys. Julia sat with her arms crossed, her gaze fixed on the skyline. Emily sat at the chessboard, tapping a pawn absent-mindedly, her brows furrowed in thought. Nathan, pale but steady, watched them both. He knew the time for half-truths was gone. Marcus's words echoed in his mind. "Stop wasting time, Emily," Nathan said gently. Breaking the silence, she looked up, eyes questioning. "There's something I need to tell you. Something I should have told you both years ago." Julia stiffened but said nothing. Nathan's hands trembled as he clasped them together. "When I was at the height of my career, when I was running boardrooms, making deals, there were men who wanted more than I could give. I cut ties with people I shouldn't have gotten involved with in the first place. Investors who weren't clean. Partners who played dirtier than I ever realized. When I refused to go further, when I tried to step away, they came for me." Emily frowned. "What do you mean, came for you?" "They threatened me," Nathan admitted. "Not just me, you, your mum, everyone I cared about. They knew my weaknesses, and you were my greatest one. So I made the worst choice. I thought disappearing would protect you." Julia turned sharply, anger flashing. Protect. You abandoned us, Nathan. You don't get to dress it up as sacrifice. You left me to raise our daughter alone while the world whispered that you were a coward. Do you have any idea what that did to her? To me? Nathan's voice cracked. Yes. Every night I replayed it. Every night I hated myself for walking away. But I thought if they believed I was gone, they'd leave you alone. And for years, they did. Julia's throat tightened, but her glare didn't soften. Emily hugged her knees to her chest, her voice trembling. So you left because you were scared? Nathan nodded slowly. Yes, I was terrified. And I thought disappearing was strength, when really it was weakness. I failed you. The admission hung heavy. Nathan lowered his gaze, tears sliding down his cheeks unchecked. After a long pause, Julia asked, her voice softer but edged with pain, "And now, what about the sickness?" Nathan inhaled shakily. It's late-stage heart failure. The stress, the years of neglect. My body's paying the price. I've got treatment keeping me stable, but without a transplant, the doctors say it's only months. Emily's face went pale. A transplant? Can't you get one? Nathan shook his head. I'm on the list, but the odds. His voice trailed off, his shoulders heavy with defeat. Emily blinked hard, her small voice breaking. So you're saying you might die before I even get to know you? Nathan's chest ached. He reached across the table, his hand hovering over hers. I don't want to leave you again, Emily. I want to fight. I'll fight as long as I can. But I can't promise forever. All I can promise is right now. Emily stared at his hand, torn between pulling back and reaching out. Finally, she placed her fingers lightly in his palm. Her voice was barely above a whisper. Then don't waste right now. Nathan closed his hand gently around hers, tears streaking down his face. For the first time in years, he felt her warmth. Julia looked away, swallowing hard. She wanted to cling to her anger, but the sight before her cracked something deep inside. The weeks that followed blurred into something strange, fragile, fleeting, yet precious. Julia allowed Emily to visit Nathan after school almost every day, though she never left them alone. At first, it was to protect Emily, but gradually she realized she was protecting herself, afraid that if she looked away, she might soften too much, forgive too easily. Nathan made no demands. He didn't beg for forgiveness or grand gestures. Instead, he filled their visits with small pieces of himself. Fragments of a life Emily had been denied. He told her stories, not about boardrooms or deals, but about simpler things. How he once got lost as a boy in his father's vineyard. How he'd broken his arm climbing a tree he swore he could conquer. How he learned chess from his grandfather by candlelight during a power outage. Emily drank in every word, sketching little scenes in her book as he spoke. One afternoon, Julia walked in to find Emily curled against Nathan's side, fast asleep, her sketchbook open on his lap. Nathan wasn't moving, his eyes fixed on his daughter's face, as if memorizing every detail. When he looked up at Julia, there was no plea, no defense, only gratitude. "Thank you," he whispered. Julia's chest tightened. She didn't answer, but she didn't look away either. By the third week, Nathan's health began to falter more visibly. His breath grew shorter, his steps slower, his hands weaker. Emily noticed, though she tried to pretend she don't one evening. As the sun dipped low, casting golden light across the clinic room, Emily set the chessboard aside. "Dad," she whispered, the words still new on her tongue, fragile but real. Are you scared? Nathan hesitated, then nodded. Yes, but not of dying. I'm scared of leaving you before I've shown you how much you mean to me. Emily's eyes filled with tears. Then show me now. Every day. Don't stop. Nathan pulled her close, holding her as tightly as his failing body allowed. Julia watched from the doorway, her heart aching with both love and sorrow. The night it happened was quiet. Julia had dozed off in the chair beside Nathan's bed, Emily nestled in her lap. A soft beeping from the monitor stirred her awake. Nathan was awake too, his eyes gentle, his hand resting weakly on Emily's hair. She's beautiful, he whispered. Stronger than I ever deserved. Julia's throat tightened. She's everything. Nathan looked at her, his gaze lingering as though he wanted to say more. I'm sorry, Julia, for all of it. If I could go back. His voice broke. But thank you. For raising her. For being everything I failed to be. Tears blurred Julia's vision. She reached out, taking his frail hand in hers. For the first time in years, she let herself soften. She still has you. Right now. That's enough. Nathan smiled faintly, exhaustion tugging at his features. His eyes drifted to Emily, then back to Julia. Promise me. You'll tell her I loved her. Even when I was gone, Julia squeezed his hand. I promise. His chest rose and fell once more, then stilled. The monitor beeped a flat, merciless line. Julia pulled Emily close, shielding her as tears spilled down her face. Emily stirred, confused, then saw her father's still form. Her cry pierced the quiet night, raw and broken. The funeral was small, private. No flashing cameras, no whispers of scandal. Just Julia, Emily, Marcus, and a handful of people who had once known Nathan as more than a CEO. Afterward, Emily stood by the grave, clutching her sketchbook. She had drawn a final picture, her father, no longer faceless, holding her hand. Beside them, Julia stood, her other hand resting gently on Emily's shoulder. Emily whispered, her voice shaky but steady, "Goodbye. Dad, I'll remember you." Julia bent down, pressing a kiss to her daughter's hair. "We both will." And as they walked away, the setting sun bathed them in light. For the first time in years, Julia felt something shift, a release of the bitterness that had chained her for so long. Nathan was gone, but the love he had left behind, fragile and imperfect, remained. It wasn't a perfect ending. It wasn't a fairy tale. But it was real, and sometimes real was enough.